okay, so how did you get some of your first guests, and who was your first big guest?
So, I spent I came back home. I had moved out when I was 18. I was
Yeah.
never back here. And I came back home when the lease ran out, and I was like, all right, let's go for it. And I put a studio in the back room,
The bunker.
and I spent 6 months really just like, I, I, I prepared a lot. Like, I made the studio look good. And my thought was, I love talking with people, so I want to get to a guest show. But I was like, I'm never going to do something that's not in person. It's just something I had, like, in
That's
order to
why.
do it my
That's
way.
where I want to go too, and I give you credit to setting up the bunker, doing it. I'm a little bit of a pussy when it comes to shit like that. I'm like, should I let it, because the economics on podcasting and sports, especially in the beginning. And I'm like, do I treat it like a business or treat it like a hobby? So anyway, so hats off to actually setting up the bunker and
Thank
doing
you.
it in person. So I'm really happy about that. Hey, Drito.
I think it's different too when you have to look at it as your sole source. I knew that this was going to be something that I was not going to do anything else. And I prepared. I While we were forced to be totally inside, like at the beginning of the pandemic, and I was mapping out how this was going to go, and I started to realize, okay, it's going to get launched in September. I
Yeah,
prepared myself for, listen, you've had a really good life.
yeah,
You worked hard, but you've had a nice life, and that life is ending right now. Like, this
yeah.
is not, this is what it
Over.
is. And so I think it's very different when, someone successful like you is doing a podcast on the
Yeah,
side and things like that, and has a
yeah.
skill for being able to do it, right? You don't
Correct.
have that pressure, and frankly, it's a far better way to go.
Yeah.
So, I knew if I was going to do it, I always ask myself, why the fuck would anyone listen to a show I do? Which, once you ask yourself that question, you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
why? It
Yeah.
makes zero sense. So anything that was in my control, and there's very little that's in your control, but anything that was in my control, I'm like, I need to be the best at. So,
Yes.
like, my studio needed to look flames, and it needed to have the best equipment, the
So
best
I
sound,
love the
high
Tony
quality.
Soprano shirts that you wear, like the references, like it's just
Yeah.
like you just do it correctly. We know Concrete. I believe he has a cinematography background and it
Yep.
shows, but like this authenticity wins, and you got
Hmm.
that in spades. So it's almost like my day job. I'm a digital marketer, right? And I always look for congruency where like you're really authentic and it's a little rustic, but that's who you are. And
Right.
that's the holy trinity of like it's all congruent, and that's what I think made Trendifier, in my opinion, a breakout success.
Well, I appreciate that a ton, because one of the things I've always done in my life, people throw around the term authenticity all the time over the past 5, 6, 7 years, and it gets
Yeah,
exhausting
yeah,
because, and I'm sure you hear it more than anyone in digital marketing. My
yeah,
God, I can't even imagine every client. Well, we want to be authentic or whatever. But for me, the word that I always thought of for everything to myself was real. I
yeah.
believe in things that are real. Let me
Correct.
expound upon that. When I was a kid, I watched the Lord of the Rings movies. They're very well done, right? Very well done. Incredible cinematography. Hats off to Peter Jackson. Everyone did a great job. Never watched them again. It's not my kind of thing, because
Yeah,
I'm the guy that sits there and goes, "This fucking like warthogs and this shit's not real."
correct, correct.
I like the raw, rigid, like, this is what it is. And that's
Yeah,
always how I've been. I've always been an out there kind of guy. Like, I'd
yeah,
say I'm kind of weird. And like, I didn't like, for example, in my career, being put in a box of like, "Ooh, you work on Wall Street and you wear a
correct,
suit," and
correct, correct,
fuck
correct.
that,
Yeah,
And so I'm like, anything I do, I'm going to live and die by falling on my sword. And so whatever that is,
I
the
love that.
only thing it's going to be is that now we have headphones and a mic and a camera, but
This is
that's the only
blended.
thing that changes. Everything else
Yeah,
is going to be just like if they were recording it 24/7. Like, I imagine that people are recording me 24/7, and like,
yeah,
what would they think of me, you know, trying to
yeah,
put on an act or something? And it's
yeah.
exhausting. And so when I was designing the show, I thought I was going to have to do like 30 to 35 solo episodes before I could get anyone to come in here. But I
Yeah,
launched 10, right? Day one of the podcast, I put 10 podcasts out,
yeah,
and two of them were guest podcasts where I got people to come in. One of them was kind of like my cousin and I were working on our music, so I just turned on the cameras, so it worked.
Yeah.
But the other one was my friend Terrence Jones, and we had a great 2.5 hour conversation.
Sounds familiar. Who is he?
He's a lawyer now, and he was the first guest I had on long form. I had him on again for episode 62, but he's someone I grew up with who, since we were like 11, he was like involved in the NAACP and everything, like a total, people throw around the term activist, like it's, an Instagram bio. He actually like is an activist guy and really gets it. And so we had a great convo, and I was like, damn, I wonder how fast we can get to this. And right when I released this shit, I had people hit me up who I knew, who, didn't live close to me, but people I knew who were doing things who no one knew or really like online may care about, but who I knew I'd have great conversations with, who were like, yo, I'd totally come on.
Wow.
I was like, oh. And so then
you were product centric, because you could have banged out a lot of shows, mid-level guests, spend some money to distribute.